The ongoing Vuwani protest action threatening to arrest anyone, regardless of status and position, involved in violence and arson. 24 schools, 3 municipal trucks and 2 houses were torched in the past week. The State Security and Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Ministers met traditional leaders in the Njhaka-njhaka area today. The mood is not one of compromise. Cooperative Governance Minister Des van Rooyen and State Security Minister David Mahlobo visited troubled areas in Vuwani to try and broker lasting peace. A meeting with traditional leaders lasted more than 2 hours. At least 23 people have been arrested for arson and vandalism and will be in court on Monday. Police deployments have been stepped up amid a looming shutdown. Minister Mahlobo says police will start reopening barricaded roads tonight. Now, for more on that meeting and what is happening, we now cross live to our reporter Njanji Chauke. Good evening, Njanji. Now, take us through the outcomes of the meeting between ministers and traditional leaders.
Thanks for joining us here in Vuwani, where we've had a very busy day. We saw those 2 ministers descending on this area to come and have further discussions with some of the traditional leaders. We saw predominantly traditional leaders from the Batsonga Royal House. The Cooperative Governance Minister did indicate that the invitation was extended to all the leaders, but not everyone was here. They've since decided to form a task team that will represent all the traditional leaders to try and broker some sort of a peace deal. As you know, that the past week this area has been the scene of violent acts. We've seen the torching of more than 24 schools in the area.
Now, Njanji, you've mentioned those 24 schools that were torched earlier this week. What happens to the school children who need to be back in the classroom on Monday morning?
Obviously, the school children are going to suffer. Emergency measures are still being put in place to see how they are going to be accommodated. There's talk of temporary structures that have to be set up, at least to try and accommodate these learners. As you know, that most of them, they no longer have that roof over their head. Yesterday, touring the area, or at least visiting one of the affected schools not very far from here in an area called Vuwani, we found that it was actually a school that was struggling as well, because they don't have many classrooms. Some of the learners actually had to get their education from under trees. Tabile.
Now, Njanji, have more arrests been made since the last update we got?
The last time we spoke to the police as well as the State Security Minister, they were saying that at least 30 people were arrested, but a few of them had to be released. It was wrong arrest. And I can also confirm that tomorrow, most of those people that have been arrested in the past few days will be appearing at a court in Malamulele. They've been charged with public violence as well as arson. As I speak to you right now, the situation remains a bit tense. A short while ago, we saw a large police deployments that were starting to go out to the various hotspots. As you know, that tonight the shutdown is supposed to resume. You'll recall that the residents were given a few days to be able to stock supplies, to be able to attend funerals, to bury their loved ones as well. The organizers, or the so-called instigators of this Vuwani protest, had said that the shutdown will resume again tonight. Tabile.
Njanji, just finally, earlier on you mentioned that not all the traditional leaders were in attendance at today's meeting. Is there a sense of hostility there?
It's a very difficult moment for Vuwani, and I suppose for the various political parties, particularly the ruling party, as well as Minister Des van Rooyen, because here we're talking about people coming together to resolve this crisis. I mean, some of the observers have been raising concerns that the two communities have been living together side by side since time immemorial, you know, and then suddenly there's been this flare-up of what seems to be motivated has some tribal undertones into it. So we saw those traditional leaders that were here today, but not all of them that were here. But the minister did say that a task team has been established and all the other traditional leaders will also be consulted. But an invitation had been extended to them to come through to this meeting this afternoon, Tabile.
We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for that update, Njanji. We'll catch up with you in our later bulletins. That was our reporter, Njanji Chauke, giving us the latest from Vuwani.